Good evening. It's the second Friday of December 2011, and tonight I'm going to start with a few comments about Congress. Now, Congress has an approval rating, I heard this past week, of either 9% or 6%, depending on who's quoting it. But I think that might not be a bad representation of how most of us feel. And then this morning, there was a poll that I saw that said that 72% of Americans don't feel that any of the incumbents currently in Congress should be reelected. And my thoughts were only 72%, but I think that about nails it on the head also. Well, if Congress has such a low approval rating with the American people, it makes you wonder why. So obviously, if the American people think so little about the job that their elected representatives are doing on Capitol Hill, it must mean that the American people don't feel that their elected representatives are working for them or listening to them. So the question is who do they work for? Who do they listen to? Well, if it's not the American people, then it must be interests other than the American people. For example, Wall Street, which I think has a pretty, I think most people, like myself, feel that Wall Street has a pretty firm grasp on at least the Republican Party. And then the left wing and all of those special interests seem to have a pretty good grasp on the Democrats. And then I think also because the Democrats are currently not in power, at least in the House, that their interest more is in the subversion of anything that the Republicans want to try to accomplish. But then on the other hand, for example, with this payroll tax cut, Nancy Pelosi said today in her briefing that the Republicans announced their own bill, or their own version, and they're including things like the Keystone Pipeline as a poison pill. Well, for a long time, I think everyone would agree that presenting clean bills in the House and the Senate would actually be a way to get things done, to get the interests of the American people looked after. And I don't know why it's not done this way other than for political reasons. So to sum up, it appears that the people that we've elected to represent us on Capitol Hill basically don't care once they get there what we think. I don't want to go so far as to say that there probably aren't a few genuine souls up there that really would like to get something done, but they're pushing against water when they do it. So with this idea of 72% of us thinking that no incumbents should be reelected, you have to also remember, as I mentioned a little while back, you know, it's going to be a bigger problem than that. Let's suppose, for example, that everybody's out of the pool all of a sudden. Well, you still have all of these professional government staffers working up there, all the behind-the-scenes influence, and we're going to have to clean house up there too. So in the case that that ever happened, there would have to be a whole lot of people in those zip codes lose their jobs besides the elected representatives. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is all in a theme tonight of how our government seems to be giving the one-fingered salute to all of the rest of us. So that was the first example. Congress as a chorus doing that. The second example is there were a couple of hearings this week that I want to mention, and the first was with Eric Holder, the Attorney General, talking about he was in a congressional hearing that was addressing the guns going across the border, fast and furious, and this is an egregious misuse of government resources to have done this in the first place. And now that the light is being shed and all the roaches are scattering, they're starting to have hearings on it. And I thought several months ago that this was going to escalate, and I don't think it's over by a long shot. I think there probably are going to be bigger repercussions for that. But during this hearing, I have a couple of comments. It was obvious that Eric Holder didn't care what the House committee wanted him to do, what documents he wanted to produce, because Darrell Issa actually had some of his staffers bring boxes of documents and set them up on the desk there to show how many documents they had received from just one gun seller, gun dealer, several boxes as compared to one single box which the Justice Department had produced at the request of this congressional committee. The question was asked of Eric Holder whether or not he would voluntarily come back in January for more hearings, or whether or not they were going to have to subpoena all of those documents. I think it's probably going to come to that, because you could tell. In fact, I think that Eric Holder blatantly lied to that committee yesterday during questioning. And in fact, the question was put to him directly: who was the single person that signed off on this fast and furious operation? And he said that he didn't know. He said he had never spoken to Secretary Clinton, the President, the Attorney General of Mexico, or any of the other people that were named about this operation, even though there was at least one press release that stated that he and Secretary Clinton had collaborated on this. But he really acted like he didn't care what they had to say. So that was the second example of the one-fingered salute that we got. The third example was Jon Corzine. Now he's drawing, one final comment about Eric Holder. I think there are going to be criminal prosecutions over this Fast and Furious, but I don't think it's going to happen until after next November's elections. Jon Corzine, another example. He was asked point blank, he was the CEO of MF Global, and he may have been CEO in name only, a figurehead, and I think you've got a lot of that with corporations these days. You've got a front man that basically is not a real CEO. He's just a name or a name there to add prestige to the operation. But he was asked point blank what happened to the $1.2 billion of the customer's money that was missing, and he said that he didn't know. Well, it may be that he didn't know, but I think there's more to it than that also. And I think there are prosecutions coming with that. But in his testimony yesterday, a lot of people thought he was going to take the fifth. I think he realized the better of it, but he really didn't say a whole lot when he was sitting up there, and he was very careful to parse all of his language while he was speaking. What happened with Jon Corzine in the question directly put to him about what happened to the $1.2 billion reminded me of another C-SPAN hearing that I saw, and it was many years ago. And it was basically in the committee that oversees the NASA budget. And something similar had happened. A question was put directly to the NASA director, and apparently $400 million had been allocated for some program that NASA had nothing to show for it. And so the congressman doing the questioning said incredulously, "So that money's just gone?" To which the NASA official that was testifying agreed, "Yeah, it was just gone. $400 million. Who cares?" Remember, this is just my opinion. And I've spoken about Herman Cain before, but of course he's by the wayside now. And I looked at something yesterday that I had not seen before, and I'm sure it's been out there a long time, but it's because these videos are on YouTube, I was actually tweaking a few things on there, and I noticed there was a YouTube politics channel, and it was a YouTube channel. So I went to that, and I saw a very interesting poll, or rather than a poll, it was each of the Republican candidates, how many likes that they had, or subscribers, how many views they had had on their videos, and it was all done graphically. And I thought that that was so interesting, because if you look at it with just a little bit of discernment, you can see what I'm about to say. And I'm going to go ahead and call the presidential election for Newt Gingrich. And here we haven't even had the first primary yet, but I'm going to call the race already for Newt Gingrich. And if you go, because it makes some sense, let's quickly go over some of the candidates. And once again, this is my opinion, but I think my opinion represents a lot of people's opinions. Rick Perry has turned into a circus clown now. He's just the butt of so many jokes. No one's taking him seriously. Michelle Bachmann started out really strong. She's fallen to the back of the pack. I don't think she can pull forward from that. Jon Huntsman, the same. Santorum, the same. Of course, Kane's gone, which leaves you with Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, and Ron Paul. Now, Ron Paul in the YouTube graphs that I saw has the most followers and the most views on his videos. But he's sort of got rock star status. But I don't think he can get elected. So that brings it to Newt or Romney. And Romney, I don't think can be the nominee, because people just can't get excited about him. The feeling is that if were he to get elected, that we would have the status quo. We would have what we have right now, which is not good enough for us. Not good enough for us. Whereas Newt Gingrich, on the other hand, he's been Speaker of the House before, very combative with the Democrats when he was Speaker of the House, but Bill Clinton was president, and they actually managed to get a lot of things done. Now, the Republicans, now that Newt Gingrich is the front runner in several polls by a good lot of points, you're starting to see some Republicans come out and talk about, and actually with a little negativity about Newt Gingrich. And I think that's a good thing, because I think that's what we need. The Republicans that are coming out with a little negativity about Newt Gingrich, of course you expect it from the Democrats, because it's just the opposite.